understand you mentor people, up and coming producers, young people in the film industry. What do you see some of them struggling with, and then some of them dealing with that you see as maybe a hindrance, but they don't realize it?
Well, so let me just start with this. I didn't have great mentor experiences being a mentee. When I was at UCLA, I had a mentor who was, I had picked, he ran a studio. I thought he'd be a great mentor. I was supposed to get 3 meetings with the guy for an hour. The first meeting, I sat around in his waiting room for half an hour before he even was like, oh, okay, yeah, come in. And then I may have gotten a half-hour FaceTime with him. He told me how great, oh yeah, you're doing everything right. The second meeting, he pawned me off to his creative exec. I never even got to meet with him again. And then the third meeting never even happened. And I was just really disappointed in the experience. And I said, God, I would love to, if I have a chance to impart any kind of knowledge, if I ever can accrue just some piece of, knowledge that I feel at this point I can impart on someone else, on a younger person or somebody who's up and coming, and help benefit them. I really want to make sure that I do it right, that I put in the time, and really listen and do everything that I promised I was going to do. If I said I'm going to give them 3 meetings, I'll give them 5. And really I really wanted to make sure that if I mentored someone, that they felt like they got the value out of it and didn't have the same sort of letdown of an experience that I had. And I had a couple experiences like that. The UCLA one was one. I had another one as well through the Producers Guild, where I decided to just be a mentee and be mentored by a bigger studio producer that had been doing it, much bigger pictures than I had been doing. Because you're always learning. And the day you stop learning, go home, do something else. Why are you doing this? So I'm always learning. I'll be learning till the day I die. That's one of the things I love about this. But I wanted to make sure that the mentors, the mentees that I was mentoring, were not having that sort of negative experience, and that they were really getting something out of it. And so I've mentored a few people through the Producers Guild mentorship program. I really do like it. I think it's a great program. So let's say, some 20-something cat who's been doing reality TV. He's been a segment producer, he's been a field producer, but he wants to do movies. I want to be an indie producer, and that's where so many of them want to go. Even with the whole new media thing, traditional feature films, a lot of younger producers still want to do feature films. So they might be experienced producers in their own right, but in a whole different video games or news or reality TV or something. They want to do features. And I'll walk them through the problem, meet with them. I might let them shadow me. One of them, I let him come to a sound mix. Excuse me. And it was funny because reality TV is totally different. So we're sitting in the sound mix, and I said to him, you can come stay as long as you want. And if you want to chime in with an idea, please go ahead, tell us. And we're sitting there, we're doing a scene, and he kind of chimes in and goes, hey, here's an idea. What do you guys think if you just got rid of that whole part of the end of the scene, just ended it right there? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, so see where right here where the scene ends, just cut out that whole part and just cut right to this scene. I go, you talking about editing? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh. I said, with the sound mix, the picture's been locked for months. I said, oh, he's like, oh. I'm like, once you're in audio on a feature film, and especially the sound mix, this picture's been locked. Not one frame of the picture is changing at this point. And he's like, oh, in reality, it's totally different. I didn't know that. In reality, while they're doing sound, they're also cutting. Let's just lose that. Okay, bump that sound up. It's a whole different workflow. It's a different post workflow. It's much, kind of more nimble. And while features, you lock picture, and now you're starting on sound and visual effects and music, but you got to lock the picture first, and not one frame of that picture is changing. And he didn't realize that, so he learned. He's like, oh, okay. And I feel like, just seeing, I don't even know if I'm answering your question yet, but seeing that these, I call them kids because they're younger than me, but these people, these younger producers are really getting something out of the process and learning something that taking art skills they already have and expanding them. They already have some understanding about post workflow, as an example, but they don't know how it translates into other areas of entertainment or other media, or some of the things we've talked about on script development. Okay, they have some understanding of story. So some of these people that already have an interest and some experience, but I can take it to maybe a different level or in an area where I have more experience than them. I really enjoy that, and I feel like I get something back as well, because I often learn from them because they bring some sort of knowledge that I didn't know about from their areas. And a lot of times it can translate into like sort of mutually beneficial working relationships in the future. And I even try to do a mentor, even if it's not a formal mentor program. Sometimes I've done interviews with these younger cats that got podcasts and what have you, and God, it was great talking to you. If I ever have questions about if I'm working on a script, could I call you or email you? I'm like, yeah, sure, please. I'm very open and very willing to do that. I think people that try to, like hold on to knowledge and keep it for themselves, I think wind up doing themselves a disservice, because I think sharing knowledge and having dialogue with other people, with people that have different views and different ideas and different knowledge about different areas, I think that helps you grow as a producer as well, that dialogue and the information, that you get. And also it helps you, I think a lot of times, formulate your own thoughts and your own ideas when you're faced with now having to tutor somebody. Now you really have to you think about what you're gonna say and what you're gonna impart and how that functions in the real world. It's not just philosophy. It's got to be put to some sort of practical application, and I think that's one of the things I enjoy. I enjoy that dialogue.
Well, you always hear well, back in my day, we had it so much harder. And I try to think about if I were a millennial today, it would actually be probably more difficult than when I was looking for a job when I was younger in the 90s, when Amazon was coming up and what is this, the tech bubble and all that. But yeah, there's social media, which is great. But then there's also the dark side, which is everyone's comparing their life online. So there's this inherent inferiority that everyone thinks everybody else is doing better than they are. Right. And then there's also whether they were affected by the recession, their parents probably were. So I started to think, what, actually millennials may have it tougher. I know right now there's this huge debate about, millennials and this and that. And some of the stereotypes may be true. I won't, say that that's not true, but I think that it would be in some sense more difficult today. But maybe I'm wrong. Do you think that they have it tougher, or it's just a different set of challenges?
My whole view on life is trade-offs. That's what life is all about. With millennials and the newer generation, it's the same. There's always pros and cons. So for example, what you were talking about, I think, new media in terms of technology, in terms of access to being able to create entertainment. Oh yeah, clearly millennials have it better in terms of access to prosumer technology. They can get their hands on Red cameras and Arri Alexas and the same stuff big TVs shoot on, and they can cut on Final Cut and Adobe Premiere, same stuff that bigger shows cut on. They have access to things, while 30 years ago, you're not going to get a $250,000 Panavision camera, and you're not going to be able to edit that. When I was a kid, we were editing our little videos with 2 VCRs, play, record, and pause. That's how you were having to cut your videos. The younger generation has access, and also access to new distribution platforms, ways to get their stuff seen that 30 years ago was unheard of, like television and movie theaters, and to some degree home video, but it was. It was different. Now they have through streaming and online. They have so many other ways to get their content seen. But then with that comes negatives. So there's a lot, because more access means more competition, and there's so the content media space is so fractured, and there's so many different things competing for eyeballs, and so many people now creating YouTube videos and creating content and what have you, that space is becoming really crowded, as opposed to, like we were talking about earlier, with Blood Simple or Sex, Lies, and Videotape. There wasn't really indie filmmakers out there doing so. It's like, wow, this is, but it was much harder for them to get access. Buying film and that kind of equipment, and it was much more expensive. And so again, there's trade-offs. There's pros and cons to everything. I think in some ways they have it better, and in some ways I think they have it tougher. Mm.